The thing you have to understand about our house is that it was never quiet. I don't mean that in some ominous way. I mean it practically. Nadia and I bought the place in 2019, a 3-bedroom bungalow in Garfield Heights, just southeast of Cleveland, and from the day we moved in, it had this ambient personality. The radiators knocked. The kitchen faucet had a post-strip that ticked for 11 seconds after you shut it off. The back door swelled in summer and you had to shoulder it. The bathroom vent fan rattled if you didn't pull the chain twice. Every house has a language, and ours was conversational. You could hear it all night if you listened. We didn't mind. We were 31 and 33 with a 4-year-old, and we'd just come off 2 years of renting a second-floor duplex in Parma, where the landlord's mother lived below us, and called code enforcement when Oliver ran in the hallway. The bungalow was ours. Its noises were ours. We learned them the way you learn the breathing of someone you sleep beside. Oliver was the kind of kid who talked constantly. Not performatively, not for attention, he was just verbal. Had been since about 18 months. Nadia's mother said it was because we talked to him like an adult, which we did, mostly because Nadia was a speech language pathologist, and she'd spent her whole career watching what happened when people didn't. Oliver narrated everything. His toys had voices. His drawings had explanations. He asked questions in the bathtub that he answered himself by the time you handed him the towel. He talked to the cat. He talked to the radiator. He talked to his cereal. So when Nadia mentioned casually one Tuesday in March of 2022 that Oliver had been having long conversations in his room that afternoon, neither of us treated it as anything. He was really going, she said. She was cutting a bell pepper at the counter and I was wiping Oliver's chair after dinner. Like a sustained back and forth. Not playing, he was listening, then responding. Listening, then responding. I said something like, "Who was he talking to?" I didn't ask. Figured it was imaginary friend territory. He's the right age. She was right. He was almost 5. Every developmental milestone checklist I'd ever seen, and I'd seen a lot because Nadia left them around the house the way other people leave magazines, noted that imaginary friends were not only normal at that age, but healthy. Pro-social cognition, perspective-taking, theory of mind development. If anything, we should have been pleased. And I was, for about 3 weeks. Oliver's friend was named Mr. Lamb. He told us about Mr. Lamb the way he told us about everything, matter-of-factly, mid-sentence, while doing something else. He was pulling his boots on for school and said, "Mister, Lamb says those are the wrong shoes for today." Nadia, kneeling in front of him, said, "Oh yeah? What shoes does Mr. Lamb think you should wear?" He said the ones with the better bottoms. Because of the ice. It was late March. There had been freezing rain overnight. Oliver's rubber-soled snow boots were in fact by the door, and the shoes he'd grabbed were his lighter ones with the smooth soles. Nadia looked at me over his head with an expression that was half amused, half impressed. She swapped the shoes. In the car, she said, "Mr. Lamb is practical." "Mr. Lamb is you," I said. "He heard you say it was icy this morning." I didn't say that. "You didn't check the weather out loud?" She thought. "No, I checked my phone at the table, but I didn't say anything." He probably looked out the window. Maybe. That was the last time we discussed Mr. Lamb as a charming developmental footnote, not because anything dramatic happened, but because over the following days, the references accumulated in a way that made them harder to file under normal. Mr. Lamb knew things. Not impossible things, not supernatural things, but things Oliver shouldn't have had access to, and things an imaginary friend built from a 4-year-old's imagination wouldn't logically contain. Oliver told Nadia that Mr. Lamb said the car needed gas. It did. Nadia had been driving on the low fuel light for 2 days and hadn't mentioned it to Oliver. Oliver told me that Mr. Lamb said the gutter on the south side was loose. I went outside and checked. It was. The bracket had pulled from the fascia, probably during the last freeze-thaw cycle. You could only see it from the driveway at an angle I rarely stood at. And Oliver's bedroom window faced the backyard. Nadia started keeping a list. Not formally, she'd never been formal about anything, but in the Notes app on her phone, she titled it Lamb Log, and I could see her adding to it at the kitchen table in the evenings, while Oliver watched TV, March 29th. Oh, says Lamb told him the mailman came twice today. Checked U.S. Paez. Tracking shows a redelivery attempt at 3:40 p.m. O was napping. March 31st. Oh, says Lamb, doesn't like the new soap in the bathroom. We switched from blue to green dish soap 2 days ago. O uses the bathroom soap, not the kitchen one. He shouldn't know. April 2nd. Oh, says Lamb says the phone is going to ring. Nadia's mother calls 4 minutes later. Not a scheduled call. April 3rd. O tells me Lamb says you didn't sleep good. I hadn't. I'd been up from 2 to 4 a.m. with acid reflux. Our bedroom is on the other side of the house from Oliver's. I want to be clear about our state of mind during this period. We were not frightened. We were fascinated, mildly unsettled, and professionally curious. Nadia especially. She worked with children who had atypical communication patterns, and she approached Mr. Lamb the way she approached everything, as data. She didn't want to shut it down. She wanted to observe it. Kids are sponges, she said. He's picking up on micro cues we're not even aware of. The soap thing, maybe he smelled it. The sleep thing, maybe you looked tired. The mailman, maybe he heard the truck from his room during a light sleep cycle and integrated it. And the gutter? Wind noise. He hears a rattle, his brain builds a character who knows about it. It's not magic, it's pattern recognition wearing a costume. I wanted to believe that. Nadia sounded completely certain when she said it, and certainty from her was usually enough for me. She was smarter than I was about human behavior, not in the abstract, but in the practical, mechanical sense of understanding how brains built meaning from noise. If she said Mr. Lamb was a sophisticated but explicable product of Oliver's developing cognition, then that's what Mr. Lamb was. But Nadia kept the log, and the log kept growing. The first time I felt something actually shift in my chest, not unease, not curiosity, but a physical sensation like a gear, finding a new tooth, was April 11th. Oliver was in his room. It was about 6:30 in the evening. Nadia was in the shower. I was in the hallway, heading to the kitchen, and I passed his door, which was open about 5 inches. He was sitting on the floor between his bed and the wall, cross-legged, facing the corner. His back was to me. He was talking, but quietly, not whispering, just at a low conversational volume, the way you talk to someone sitting right next to you. No, he's okay, Oliver said. He just gets quiet sometimes. Mom says it's because work is hard. A pause. I don't know. I think it's the money stuff. A pause. She doesn't say that in front of me. I just know. A pause. Yeah. I stood in the hallway, and I listened to my son discuss my financial anxiety with someone who was not there. He was right. Things were tight. I'd been laid off from my position as a GIS analyst at a civil engineering firm the previous November, and had been doing contract work since. Nadia's income was stable, but not enough on its own. We hadn't talked about it in front of Oliver. We'd been meticulous about that. Not because we were pretending because he was 4, and the weight wasn't his to carry. But he knew, and he was telling Mr. Lamb. I stepped back from the door. I went to the kitchen. I sat at the table, and I did not move until Nadia came out of the shower, and when she sat down across from me with her hair in a towel, I told her what I'd heard. She didn't write it down. She just looked at me for a long moment and said, "Okay." "Okay, what?" "Okay. I'll talk to him tomorrow." Gently. She did. I wasn't there for it. I was at the library using their Wi-Fi for a project submission, but she told me about it that night in bed. She'd sat with Oliver on his floor and asked about Mr. Lamb. Not confrontationally. She asked what Mr. Lamb looked like. Oliver said he was tall and thin and wore a gray coat and had soft hands. She asked where Mr. Lamb lived. Oliver said he didn't live anywhere, that he was just here. She asked if Mr. Lamb was in the room right now. Oliver said no, Mr. Lamb comes when it's quiet. She asked if Mr. Lamb ever scared him. Oliver looked confused by the question and said, He's nice, Mom. He just wants to know how we're doing. How we're doing, Nadia repeated in the dark bedroom. That's what he said. Word for word. So he's not Oliver's friend. He's what? An observer. I don't know, but the framing is weird. Kids' imaginary friends are peers. They're the same age, or they're fantastical dragons, superheroes. They don't wear gray coats and have soft hands and ask about family finances. That's an adult construction. So what does that mean? It means Oliver might be constructing a caretaker figure, which could be a response to anxiety he's absorbing from us, which makes sense given everything you just described. She turned toward me in the dark. It doesn't mean anything is wrong. It means he needs us to be more careful about what we're radiating. I agreed. That interpretation made sense. It was the responsible, grounded, clinically supported interpretation. We changed our behavior. We made a conscious effort to reduce tension in the house. We didn't talk about money after 7 p.m. We did more things together on weekends. We laughed more deliberately, which sounds artificial, but it's what you do when you realize your household's emotional weather is readable by a child who has started building invisible infrastructure to manage it. And for about 10 days, the Mr. Lamb references decreased, not to zero, but Oliver mentioned him less, and when he did, it was casual. Mr. Lamb thinks the cat is funny. Mr. Lamb likes the blue cup better, developmentally normal, imaginary friend behavior. Nadia was satisfied. I was relieved. Then on April 22nd, Nadia's colleague, a woman named Denise, who worked at the same pediatric therapy practice, came over for dinner. Denise was fine. She was loud and warm and brought wine we couldn't afford to reciprocate and talked about her divorce in a way that was candid without being heavy. Oliver liked her. He showed her his room, showed her his drawings, showed her the cat's favorite spot behind the couch. Normal evening. Normal social interaction. The kind of thing we should have been doing more of. After dinner, Oliver was playing on the living room floor while the three of us sat at the table. Denise said something about her ex-husband's new apartment, something mildly cutting, and laughed. Nadia laughed. I smiled. Oliver, without looking up from his blocks, said, Mr. Lamb says she's lying about being okay. The table went quiet. Denise looked at us. Nadia looked at me. I looked at Oliver, who was still building, completely unbothered. Who's Mr. Lamb? Denise asked. Oliver's imaginary friend, Nadia said, and her voice was smooth and easy and professional, and she pivoted to a story about a child she'd worked with who had an imaginary friend named Buckethead, and Denise laughed, and the moment passed. But later, after Denise left, Nadia stood in the kitchen with her back to me and said, she wasn't okay. What? Denise. She's not okay. The divorce is destroying her. She told me last week she's been having panic attacks in the car before work. Oliver didn't know that. No. So, he read her. He's perceptive. Kids are... He didn't say he thought she was lying. He said Mr. Lamb said it. He attributed the observation to an external source. That's not pattern recognition anymore. That's... She stopped. That's what? She shook her head and started washing the wine glasses. I stood behind her and waited, but she didn't finish the sentence. And I didn't ask again, because I think we both understood that the end of that sentence was a place neither of us wanted to go while standing in our kitchen at 9:30 on a Tuesday. Nadia made a decision the next day. She called a colleague at the Cleveland Clinic's Pediatric Behavioral Health Unit, someone she'd referred to before, a child psychologist named Dr. Amira Hassan. She described Oliver's behavior in clinical terms: the sustained imaginary companion, the unusual characteristics, the apparent access to information beyond his observational capacity, the attribution of accurate insights to an external persona. Dr. Hassan agreed to see Oliver for an evaluation. The appointment was May 3rd. I took the morning off from a contract. We drove to the clinic as a family. Oliver was cheerful in the back seat. He asked if Mr. Lamb could come inside. Nadia said, of course. Dr. Hassan was calm and precise and spoke to Oliver like a person. She had toys in her office, but not too many. She talked to him for 40 minutes while Nadia and I sat in the waiting room. And I remember the chairs were that specific medical facility upholstery that is somehow both soft and repellent, and the overhead light buzzed at a frequency that lodged itself behind my left eye. When she came out, she asked to speak with us privately. A nurse took Oliver to a play area. Oliver is cognitively advanced, Dr. Hassan said. His verbal reasoning is well above age norms. His emotional intelligence is striking. He reads affect with an accuracy I'd associate with a child 2 to 3 years older. And Mr. Lamb? Nadia asked. I asked about Mr. Lamb. Oliver described him consistently and without hesitation. Tall, thin, gray coat, soft hands, kind voice. He says Mr. Lamb has been with him since the house, not since they moved in, since the house. I asked what that meant, and he said, he was already here. I felt Nadia's hand tighten on the arm of her chair. That's not uncommon language for imaginary companions, Dr. Hassan continued. Children often describe them as discovered rather than created. It helps maintain the reality of the figure. But the information, Nadia said, the things Oliver knows through Mr. Lamb that he shouldn't have access to. Dr. Hassan was quiet for a moment. I want to be careful here. I don't want to pathologize what may be a very healthy cognitive process. Oliver is extraordinarily observant. He's also in a household where both parents are intelligent, emotionally attuned, and under stress. Children in that environment develop compensatory perceptual strategies. They learn to read microexpressions, body tension, vocal pitch, ambient sound. Mr. Lamb may be the narrative structure Oliver uses to organize those perceptions. Maybe, I said. She looked at me directly. I'd like to see him again in 2 weeks. In the meantime, I'd recommend you not challenge Mr. Lamb's existence or express anxiety about him in Oliver's presence. Treat him as you would any imaginary friend. Let him be. We drove home. Oliver fell asleep in his car seat. Nadia and I didn't talk. The radio was on low, some NPR segment about supply chain logistics, and the sound of it blended with the road noise until it was just texture. That night, I woke at 2:15 a.m. I don't know what woke me. Not a sound, not a dream, just a sudden full-body awareness of being conscious, like a switch had been flipped. I lay still for a moment. Nadia was asleep beside me, breathing steadily. The house was doing its normal thing, the faint tick of the faucet, the furnace cycling. Then I heard Oliver's voice. Not loud, not distressed, just talking the way he talked to Mr. Lamb. Low, conversational, intimate. I got up, I walked down the hallway in the dark. His door was open the same 5 inches. The nightlight in his room cast a warm orange wash across the floor. He was sitting up in bed, cross-legged, facing the far corner of the room where his dresser met the wall. The corner was dark, the nightlight didn't reach it. I know, Oliver said, but she worries. Pause. It's not her fault. She just wants to make sure. Pause. I told her you were nice. Pause. Okay, I'll ask. And then he turned and looked directly at me through the 5-inch gap in the door, and his eyes found mine instantly, without searching, as if he'd known I was there the entire time. Dad, he said, Mr. Lamb wants to know why you're standing in the hallway. I don't remember what I said. Something about checking on him. Something about hearing him talk. Something parental and deflective. He accepted it without suspicion and lay back down, and I pulled his blanket up, and he was asleep within a minute. I went back to bed. I did not sleep. At 5 a.m., with the first gray light leaking through the curtains, I told Nadia what had happened. She listened without moving. Then she said, "He knew you were there." Immediately. He didn't startle. He didn't look around. He looked right at the gap in the door. Because he heard you. I didn't make a sound. You think you didn't make a sound. Old hardwood floors, bare feet, you made a sound. Nadia. What? He said Mr. Lamb wants to know why I'm standing in the hallway. Present tense. Wants to know, like Mr. Lamb could see me. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "We're going to stay calm. We're going to follow Dr. Hassan's recommendation. We're not going to spiral. I'm not spiraling. You're not spiraling yet. But you're building a narrative, and I need you to not do that. Because if both of us start treating this as something other than what it almost certainly is, we're going to damage him. We're going to make him feel like there's something wrong with him. She was right. I knew she was right. And yet, the next 2 weeks were difficult in a way I struggle to describe. Nothing happened. That's the point. The house was the same. Oliver was the same. He went to preschool. He played. He ate. He slept. He talked to Mr. Lamb in the quiet moments. The Mr. Lamb references continued at their usual rate, 2 or 3 a day, sometimes more. They remained accurate in that low-grade, unsettling way that could always be explained, but never comfortably. But something had changed in how I occupied the house. I started noticing where I was in relation to corners. Oliver always faced corners when he spoke to Mr. Lamb. His bedroom corner. The corner of the living room where the bookshelf met the wall. Once, the corner of the kitchen where the counter met the pantry door. It was always corners. The places where 2 walls met and made a seam. I started noticing the quality of the dark in those corners. This is hard to explain without sounding like I'd already lost the thread, but I need to try. You know how, in any room, even a well-lit one, the corners where walls converge are slightly darker than the flat planes? It's just geometry. Light hits flat surfaces more evenly than recessed angles. It's physics. But once I started looking, I couldn't stop looking, and the more I looked, the more I felt that the darkness in the corners of our house was, I want to say, thicker. Not visually, emotionally. Like the air itself was denser there. Like the corners were not just where the walls met, but where the room had pockets. I didn't tell Nadia this. I didn't tell anyone. I started sitting in the living room after Oliver went to bed, and I'd position myself where I could see 2 or 3 corners at once. I'd sit with a book, or my laptop, or just a glass of water, and I'd watch. Not staring, just orienting, keeping the corners in my peripheral vision. Nothing was ever there. But I was looking, and looking changed me. It changed how I processed the normal sounds of the house. The radiator knock became something I triangulated. Which corner was it nearest? The faucet drip had always come from the kitchen, but now I was aware that the kitchen had 4 corners, and the drip was closest to the one Oliver sometimes faced. The furnace cycling pushed warm air through the vents, and I could feel it differently in different parts of a room. And near the corners, the air felt, I don't know, older, less moved. I'm aware of how this sounds. On May 14th, we went back to Dr. Hassan. Oliver was the same verbal, bright, easygoing. He told Dr. Hassan that Mr. Lamb had been quieter lately but was still around. She asked him, "Where is Mr. Lamb right now?" Oliver pointed to the corner of her office behind the door. She looked at the corner. I looked at the corner. There was nothing there, a small table with a plant on it, the meeting point of 2 white walls. "What's he doing?" she asked. "Listening," Oliver said. After the session, Dr. Hassan told us she saw no markers of concern. Oliver's attachment was secure, his affect was appropriate, his relationship with Mr. Lamb was stable, non-distressing, and internally consistent. She recommended continued observation and a follow-up in a month. In the car, Nadia said, "See? See what? He's fine. This is fine. We need to let it be fine." That night, I came home from a contract meeting and the house was already dark. Nadia and Oliver were asleep. It was about 10:30. I put my bag down in the kitchen and poured a glass of water and stood at the counter drinking it. The house was quiet in its usual way. Faucet tick, furnace hum, the distant, almost subliminal vibration that houses make when they're just existing. But there was something else, or rather, there was a quality to the silence that had a shape. I don't know how else to say it. I was standing in my kitchen in the dark, and the silence had a shape, and the shape was attentive. I turned around slowly. The kitchen has a corner behind the door that leads to the basement stairs. It's the least used corner of the most used room. The trash can sits there. The broom leans against the wall. The corner was dark, the same dark it always was. but I was standing 10 feet from it, and my body, not my mind, my body did not want to move closer. I took my water to the bedroom. I got into bed. Nadia shifted and murmured, and I said, "It's just me." And she said, "Okay," and went back to sleep. I lay in the dark and listened to the house, and the house listened back. I need to talk about what happened at the dinner. May 19th, Nadia's parents came over. They lived in Lakewood, about 25 minutes away. Her father, Greg, was a retired HVAC installer. Her mother, Patricia, was a retired school secretary. Good people. Solid people. They came over every few weeks for dinner, and Greg always checked something in the house, a vent, a filter, the water heater. And Patricia always brought a foil-covered dish we didn't need, but ate gratefully. Oliver adored them. He showed Greg his drawings and sat in Patricia's lap and talked about school and the cat and, inevitably, Mr. Lamb. "Who's Mr. Lamb?" Greg asked, looking at Nadia. "Imaginary friend," Nadia said. "Smooth, easy, professional." "Ah," Greg nodded. "You had one of those. Birdie." "Birdie was a phase," Nadia said. "Birdie told you the dog was pregnant before we knew," Patricia said. "Remember that, Greg? She came downstairs and said Birdie told her there were puppies in Rosie's tummy." We took Rosie to the vet the next week, and sure enough. The table was quiet for a moment. "Kids are perceptive," Nadia said. "They are," Patricia agreed, and the conversation moved on. But after dinner, while Nadia and Patricia were cleaning up and Greg was in the bathroom, Oliver was on the living room floor with his blocks, and I was sitting in the armchair, and he said, without looking up, "Mr. Lamb says Grandpa's going to get sick." I set my coffee down. "What?" "Mr. Lamb says Grandpa's going to get sick. Not now, later," in his chest. "Oliver, he says it's not bad yet. He says Grandpa should go to the doctor." Greg came back into the room, and Oliver said, "Grandpa, you should go to the doctor." Greg laughed. "I should, buddy. Your grandma's been telling me that for years." "Mr. Lamb says it's in your chest." The room got very still. Greg looked at me. I looked at Oliver. Oliver was building a tower. "Who's Mr. Lamb again?" Greg asked. "My friend. He lives in the corners." Greg and Patricia left at 8:30. In the driveway, Patricia pulled me aside and said, "Greg's had a cough since February. He won't go in." "It's probably nothing," I said. "Probably." Oliver he picks up on things. "I know." She looked back at the house. Nadia was the same way. I watched their taillights shrink down the street, and I stood in the driveway, in the cold, and I looked at the house. The windows were warm, with interior light. It looked like every house on the block. It looked like safety. But I was outside it. And the thing I felt was not eagerness to go back in. Greg went to the doctor the following week. They found a nodule on his left lung. Stage 1. Caught early. Operable. He had surgery in June and recovered fully and is fine today. I need you to understand. I was glad. I am glad. The early detection almost certainly saved his life, or at the very minimum saved him years of harder treatment. Oliver's comment, Mr. Lamb's comment, led directly to an outcome that was unambiguously good. And that fact is the thing that I have turned over in my hands every day since, because it is the fact that prevents me from doing what every instinct is telling me to do, which is to make it stop. How do you fight something that helps? Nadia and I had our first real argument about Mr. Lamb on June 3rd, after Greg's diagnosis, but before his surgery. She came home from visiting her parents, and she was shaken, not by the diagnosis she was handling, that with her usual composure, but by something Oliver had said in the car on the way home from preschool. He said Mr. Lamb told him there's a woman in the house behind ours who cries at night. What? The Kowalski house, behind us. He said Mr. Lamb can hear her through the walls. Through our walls? That's what he said. Through the walls and through the ground and through the air between the houses. He said Mr. Lamb hears everything on the street. We were standing in the bedroom with the door closed. Oliver was watching a show in the living room. That's a significant expansion, Nadia said, her clinical voice. I recognized it. Expansion? The scope. Before, Mr. Lamb knew things about our house, our family. Now Oliver is attributing knowledge to him that extends beyond the property. That's a different cognitive operation. Or it's the same thing it's always been, and it's just getting bigger. The same thing it's always been is an imaginary friend. Nadia. It's an imaginary friend. He diagnosed your father's lung cancer. The sentence hit the air between us, and neither of us moved for a long time. He noticed a cough, she said finally. He built a narrative around the cough. The narrative happened to be correct. That is not diagnosis. That is... What? What is it? It's coincidence filtered through a remarkably perceptive child. And the ice on the boots, and the gas in the car, and the gutter, and Denise, and the mailman, and the soap, and all of those have explanations. I know they have explanations. But at some point, the number of explanations becomes its own problem. At some point, the list gets long enough that the most rational position is that something is actually happening. She sat on the bed. She put her hands over her face. She stayed like that for a while. I know, she said. You know? She took her hands away. Her eyes were wet. I know it's not just an imaginary friend. I've known for weeks. I'm a speech-language pathologist. I have seen hundreds of children with imaginary companions. None of them are like this. This is not coming from Oliver. The information is not coming from Oliver. So where is it coming from? I don't know. And I don't know how to think about it. I don't have a framework, and I have clinical training, and I have developmental theory, and I have 20 years of rationalism, and none of it has a drawer where I can put this. So I've been putting it in the imaginary friend drawer because it's the only one I have. I sat beside her. I put my hand on her knee. The house hummed around us. What if it's the house? I said. She looked at me. What if it's literally the house? Something in the structure, something environmental, off-gassing, electrical field, some kind of, I don't know. Something that's affecting Oliver's neurology, making him more receptive, or making him confabulate in a particular way. That's not how any of that works. I know. And it doesn't explain the accuracy. I know. We sat there. From the living room, we could hear the tinny sound of Oliver's show. The cat walked past the bedroom door with a jingle of her collar bell. I want to have the house tested, I said. For what? Everything. Air quality, electromagnetic fields, mold, carbon monoxide, radon, everything. Nadia agreed. Not because she believed it would yield results, but because it was something to do, and doing something felt better than sitting in the house and listening to the shape of the silence. I hired an environmental inspector. He came on June 10th. He was a heavy man named Dale who wore a polo shirt with his company logo and moved through our house with the bored efficiency of someone who'd done this 800 times. He tested the air in every room. He checked the electrical panel. He measured EMF at multiple points. He checked for carbon monoxide, radon, volatile organic compounds, and mold. The house was clean. Everything within normal parameters. Below normal in some cases. You've got a healthy house, Dale said, packing up his equipment in the kitchen. Better than most in this neighborhood, honestly. Previous owners must have kept it up. What do you know about them? I asked. The previous owners. He looked at me. Nothing. I just mean the bones are good. After he left, I looked up the property history. I'd done a cursory version of this when we bought the house, but now I went deeper. County Recorder's Office, tax records, building permits. The house was built in 1951. First owner was a family named Garrett. They'd lived there until 1978. Then, a single man named Paul Dressler owned it until 2003. Then a couple named Whitfield from 2003 to 2018. Then it was vacant for about a year before we bought it. Nothing unusual. No deaths on the property that I could find. No crimes. No notable events. A completely ordinary house with a completely ordinary history occupied by completely ordinary people. But I kept looking. because looking was the only thing I could do. I found a Facebook profile for one of the Whitfields, Sandra Whitfield. She was in Tennessee now, remarried. I sent her a message. I said I'd bought her old house and wanted to ask a few questions about the property. Maintenance stuff. She replied the next day. We talked on the phone for 20 minutes. She was friendly and a little nostalgic. She told me about the radiators. They'll knock all winter. Nothing you can do. The back door needs to be sanded every other year. And the bathroom fan. Pull the chain twice, or it'll rattle all night. She'd loved the house. They'd left because her husband got a job in Knoxville. Near the end of the call, I asked her if she'd ever noticed anything unusual about the house, anything she couldn't explain. She was quiet for a moment. Like what? She said. I don't know. Just anything. We had a cat that wouldn't go into the back corner of the kitchen, walked around it every single time. But cats are weird. Anything else? Another pause, longer this time. My daughter had a phase, she said. She was about 4 or 5. She had like an invisible friend situation, very elaborate, very detailed. Went on for about a year. Something moved in my chest, that gear again, finding the next tooth. What was the friend's name? I don't remember. It was a long time ago. Something old-fashioned. She outgrew it. Do you remember? Did the friend know things? Things your daughter shouldn't have known? The silence this time was different. It had weight. Why are you asking me this? Sandra said. My son has an imaginary friend. He's 4. The friend seems to know things. What kind of things? I told her. Not everything, but enough. The gutter, the fuel light, Greg's lung. Sandra didn't speak for a long time. I could hear her breathing. I could hear a television in her background, someone else's life continuing normally. My daughter told us the pipes were going to freeze, she said, 3 days before they did. She said her friend told her the water was scared of the cold. We didn't do anything about it. The pipes burst in the laundry room. $2,000 in damage. Sandra. And she told us the neighbor's dog had gotten out before anyone knew. And she told us my mother-in-law was going to fall. My mother-in-law fell the next week, broke her hip. Did you ever... We didn't talk about it. We didn't know how to talk about it. She outgrew it. That's what I told myself. She outgrew it, and then we moved, and that was the end of it. Did it end? We moved. I don't know what it means for something to end in a house you don't live in anymore. We talked for a few more minutes. She gave me her daughter's number. Her name was Kylie. She was 23 now, living in Memphis. Sandra said she hadn't talked to Kylie about the imaginary friend in years and didn't know if Kylie even remembered it. I thanked her and hung up and sat in the kitchen and looked at the corner behind the basement door. I called Kylie the next day. She didn't answer. I texted. She replied 2 days later. Sorry. Who is this? I explained. She agreed to talk. Kylie's voice was flat and guarded in a way that made me think she'd already talked to her mother. I remember him, she said. What do you remember? He was tall. He wore a gray coat. He had soft hands. He stood in the corners. I closed my eyes. His name was Mr. Shepherd, she said. Not Mr. Lamb? No, Mr. Shepherd. But yeah, he was real. I mean, he wasn't real. He was there. When did he stop? When we moved. It was like he didn't follow. He stayed with the house. Did he ever scare you? No. He was gentle. He knew everything. It was like having a parent who could hear everything that was happening everywhere. I felt safe with him. Did anyone else in your family ever experience anything? No, just me. It was only ever me. Why do you think that was? I don't know. I was the youngest. I was the one who was alone the most. I think maybe he needed someone who had room for him, like space in their attention. My parents were busy. My brother didn't care about anything except sports. I was the one who sat still. I was the one who listened. I thanked her and ended the call. That night, In bed, I told Nadia everything. She lay on her back and stared at the ceiling and said nothing for a long time. "Mr. Shepard," she finally said. "Same description? Same behavior? Same age of the child?" "Different name. Barely different. Lamb, shepherd, they're the same metaphor." She turned her head and looked at me. "What metaphor?" "Someone who tends a flock. Someone who guides. Someone who watches over. Or someone who herds," she said. We lay in the dark. "I'm not ready to accept what you're implying," she said. "I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you what I found. You're implying there's something in this house that selects young children and establishes a relationship with them through an identity it adjusts to each new host." I hadn't said that, but she was right. That was what the evidence pointed to. "What does it want?" she asked. Kylie said it wanted to help. It warned them about the pipes, about the dog, about the fall. And Oliver. It warned us about Greg. Yes. So it helps. It helps. Then what's the problem? The problem was the question itself. The problem was that I could feel the logic of it constructing itself in real time, building a case for acceptance. And the voice in my head that was building that case sounded reasonable and calm and certain. And it sounded exactly like Nadia had sounded for 2 months, saying, "This is fine. He's fine. Let it be fine." And I couldn't tell anymore whether the voice that said, "Let it be fine," was wisdom or something else. The next 3 months are harder to describe because less happened and more changed. Oliver continued to talk to Mr. Lamb. The conversations continued to yield accurate, sometimes prescient information. Nadia and I settled into an uneasy détente with the situation. We didn't discuss it unless something new happened. We went to Dr. Hassan twice more. She continued to find nothing clinically concerning. Oliver was thriving by every measurable standard socially, emotionally, cognitively. But I was not thriving. I was sleeping less. I was eating the same, but losing weight. I was doing my contract work with the same competence. But I had to push harder, to focus, because part of my attention was always allocated to the house, to the corners, to the quality of silence in different rooms at different times of day. I was monitoring constantly for something I couldn't define, and I began to notice, or believe I noticed, that the corners were different when Oliver was home versus when he wasn't. When Oliver was at preschool and Nadia was at work and I was alone in the house and the corners were just corners. The dark was just dark. The air was still. When Oliver was home, especially when he was quiet, reading, drawing, falling asleep, the corners felt occupied, not by anything visible, not by anything I could point to or describe. But the house felt fuller. Like the presence of my son activated something that lay dormant in his absence. I stood one afternoon in Oliver's empty bedroom while he was at school. I stood in the center of the room and looked at the corner where he always talked to Mr. Lamb. The nightlight was off. The curtains were half drawn. The corner was just drywall and carpet and the faint smell of a child's room crayons, fabric softener, the waxy sweetness of cheap shampoo. Nothing. Then I heard the front door open and Oliver's voice. Dad, we're home." And I swear on everything that I am, the corner changed. Not visually, thermally. The air in the corner moved. A faint, directed coolness like someone had exhaled. I left the room. I picked up my son and swung him around, and he laughed and said, "Mr. Lamb missed you today." And I said, "I missed him too." Because I did not know what else to say. By September, I was doing something I am not proud of. I was recording Oliver's conversations. I know how that sounds. But I was desperate for data. I needed something external to myself, something I could play back and analyze with the rational part of my brain instead of the part that stood in corners and felt the air move. I put an old phone in Oliver's room, propped on his bookshelf between 2 picture books, set to record audio continuously from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I didn't tell Nadia. I checked the recordings each morning while she was in the shower, fast-forwarding through hours of silence and sleep sounds to find the conversations. They were consistent. Oliver spoke to Mr. Lamb every night for between 5 and 20 minutes, usually between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m., the first hour after we put him to bed, when the house went quiet. His side of the conversations was exactly what you'd expect from hearing one half of a phone call. Greetings, questions, responses, laughter, occasionally. Corrections, sometimes. No, that's not right, Mr. Lamb. Which gutted me because it was so normal. But there was something else on the recordings. I noticed it on the third night. During the pauses, the gaps where Mr. Lamb was supposedly speaking, there was a sound. Not a voice, not words. A sound. So faint that I had to put earbuds in and turn the volume all the way up and close my eyes to hear it. It was a low, tonal hum. Not mechanical, not electrical, not the furnace, not the radiator, not the refrigerator, not any appliance I could identify. It was closer to a vocal sound, like a sustained exhalation through a very narrow opening, a note held just below the threshold of what the phone's microphone could cleanly capture. It wavered slightly in pitch. It occurred only during the pauses. It stopped the instant Oliver began speaking again. I recorded for 9 nights. The hum was present in every recording. It occurred only during Mr. Lamb's speaking turns. It originated, as best I could tell by volume and microphone sensitivity, from the corner of the room. On the 10th night, I told Nadia. I played her the recording. I showed her the pattern. She listened with her earbuds in and her eyes closed and her clinical face on. And after 7 minutes, she took the earbuds out and put them on the table and sat very still. "It's a sound," she said. "It's a sound that occurs only during conversational gaps, in a pattern consistent with turn-taking." It could be the house, pipes, settling, thermal expansion. It tracks with conversational rhythm. It stops when he starts. It starts when he stops. It's below the threshold of clear capture. We're hearing something and imposing a pattern. Listen to it again. She didn't listen to it again. "I want to move," she said. I hadn't expected that. Nadia was not a person who retreated. She processed, analyzed, reframed, and moved forward. She did not leave. "Kylie's family moved," I said. "And whatever it was stayed in the house." "Exactly. It stayed. It didn't follow. If we leave, Oliver loses contact with it, and it becomes a childhood memory. And if it doesn't stay?" Sandra's daughter said it stayed. Sandra's daughter was 5 when they moved. She's 23 now. She might not know what it became. What's the alternative? We stay in a house where something is talking to our child through the corners? I don't know. That's not good enough. I know. We didn't move. We couldn't. The house was what we could afford, and the market was not in our favor. And I was still contract only. And Nadia's salary was steady, but not enough for a new mortgage. The financial reality was a wall, and behind the wall was a house that hummed in conversational rhythm to our sleeping son. But something changed between Nadia and me after that conversation. We had both, separately and then together, acknowledged that we could not explain what was happening. And that acknowledgement created a new kind of silence between us. Not the comfortable silence of a functional marriage, but the dense, careful silence of 2 people who have agreed to live with something they cannot discuss further without it becoming the only thing they are. We went about our days. We went to work. We made dinner. We gave Oliver baths and read him stories and tucked him in and kissed him goodnight and walked out of his room and left him there with it. On November 8th, Oliver said something that changed the texture of everything. We were eating breakfast. He was working through a bowl of oatmeal with the focused attention he brought to everything. Nadia was standing at the counter with coffee. I was sitting across from him. "Mr. Lamb says there was a boy here before me," Oliver said. Nadia and I looked at each other. "Before you," I said. "A long time ago, a boy named Kevin. Mr. Lamb says Kevin was his friend too." "What happened to Kevin?" Nadia asked. Her voice was steady. "He grew up. Mr. Lamb says they all grow up. He says he's always here, and the children come and go." "How many children?" I asked. Oliver tilted his head the way he did when he was listening. 3 before me, Kevin and a girl, and another boy before that. Mr. Lamb says the first boy was a long time ago, when the house was new. The Garretts, the first owners, 1951. Does Mr. Lamb get sad when the children leave? Nadia asked. Oliver thought about it, or listened. It was getting harder to tell the difference. He says he doesn't leave. He says he waits. He says the waiting is very long, but it's okay because he knows another one will come. He ate a spoonful of oatmeal. He says I'm his favorite, Oliver said, and smiled. I have tried in the months since to determine why that sentence frightened me more than anything else Oliver has ever reported. It was not threatening. It was warm. It was the kind of thing a child says with pleasure and pride. But it was also the first time Mr. Lamb had expressed a preference, an opinion that was not observational, but emotional. He was not reporting a loose gutter or a fuel gauge. He was telling my son that he was chosen, special, favored, and I remembered what Kylie had said. I think maybe he needed someone who had room for him. Room for him. Oliver had room. Oliver was bright and verbal and emotionally available, and he had two parents who loved him, but who were stressed and distracted, and who had, without meaning to, left a gap in the texture of their attention that something had filled. And now that something had favorites. We went back to Dr. Hassan. We told her everything, the recordings. Sandra Whitfield. Kylie. The hum. The historical children. The favorites. Comment. She listened carefully. She did not dismiss us. She did not look uncomfortable. I want to be honest with you, she said. What you're describing falls outside any clinical framework I have. The consistency of the phenomenon across occupants is not something I can explain through Oliver's cognition alone. So, what do we do? Nadia asked. I think you have two options. You can attempt to end Oliver's relationship with Mr. Lamb through behavioral intervention redirection, room changes, disruption of the conversational pattern. This might work, but it might also cause Oliver significant distress because from his perspective, you'd be taking away someone he trusts. And the other option? I said. You observe. You maintain your relationship with Oliver. You stay close to him, and you accept that you may be sharing your home with something you cannot explain, and that this thing, whatever it is, has so far been consistently benign. So far, I said. So far, she agreed. It's February now. Oliver is 5.5. Mr. Lamb is still here. The conversations are longer now. Sometimes I hear Oliver laughing in his room, and when I come to the door, he's sitting cross-legged in the corner, and the laughter trails off, and he looks at me and says, Mr. Lamb was telling a funny story. I ask what the story was about, and he says he can't explain it because it's in a language Mr. Lamb uses that doesn't have words. He said that. A language without words. Nadia has built a wall inside herself, and she lives on the functioning side of it. She does not discuss Mr. Lamb. She does not reference the recordings. When Oliver mentions Mr. Lamb at the dinner table, she responds the way she would to any childhood narrative, with warmth and gentle redirection. She is performing normality with a skill that would be admirable if it weren't also terrifying, because I can see the effort it costs her, and I can see that the effort is getting easier, which means either she is adapting or she is being eroded, and I cannot tell the difference from outside. Last week I woke at 3 a.m., not abruptly, gently, like being lifted out of sleep by a hand beneath the surface. I walked to Oliver's room. The door was open 5 inches. The nightlight was on. He was asleep. Genuinely asleep. I could hear the slow, heavy breathing of a child deep in a dream. But the sound was there, the hum. Not from a recording played through earbuds at maximum volume, but in the air of the room, in the corner, low and steady and tonal and alive. I stood in the hallway and I listened to it. And here is the part I have not told Nadia. Here's the part I have not told Dr. Hassan. Here's the part I am telling you because I need someone to hold it who is not inside this house. The hum was not coming from the corner. It was coming from Oliver, from his chest, from his rib cage, rising and falling with his breath. A sound that was not his voice, but was using his body as its instrument, playing itself through him the way breath plays through a pipe, the way wind plays through a gap in a wall. My son was humming in his sleep, and the hum was not his. I stood there for a long time. I don't know how long. Long enough for the quality of the dark to change, for the nightlight to seem dimmer, for the corner to seem deeper than geometry should allow. And then Oliver opened his eyes. Not the way children wake, groggy, confused, slow. He opened his eyes the way a camera opens its shutter. One moment closed, the next, fully, completely open. And he looked at me. And his eyes were his eyes, my son's brown eyes, my son's face. But the expression was not his. The expression was patient. It was warm. It was the expression of someone who has been waiting for you to arrive at a conclusion they reached a long time ago. "Hi, Dad," Oliver said. And the voice was his. And the voice was not his. It was both at once, like two people speaking the same words in perfect synchronization, and one of them was my son, and one of them was something that has been living in the corners of this house since before my son was born, since before I was born, something that wears the name Lamb or Shepherd or whatever name the current child will trust, something that is patient and gentle and helpful and kind and has never once done anything to harm anyone in this house. "Mr. Lamb wants you to know it's okay," Oliver said. "He says you can stop watching now. He says he's taking care of us." He closed his eyes. The hum continued. The corner breathed. I went back to bed. I lay beside Nadia. The furnace cycled. The faucet ticked. I have not told Nadia. I have not told anyone. Because the thing in the corner is right. Greg is alive because of it. The pipes didn't burst for the Whitfields until after they stopped listening. And Oliver is happy and healthy and thriving and loved. And the thing that loves him has been here longer than any of us and will be here after we leave. And the question that keeps me awake, the question that I bring to you because I cannot carry it alone any longer, is not whether Mr. Lamb is real and not whether Mr. Lamb is dangerous, but whether the fact that I have stopped looking at the corners means that I have made my peace with this, or whether making my peace with this is the last thing that needed to happen before whatever it is could stop pretending to live in the corners and start living somewhere else. Oliver said something this morning. He was eating breakfast and he looked up at me with those brown eyes and he said, "Mr. Lamb says the new baby is going to be healthy." Nadia is not pregnant. Nadia set her coffee down slowly. We have not told Oliver we've been trying. We have not told anyone we've been trying. And the house hums around us, and the corners are just corners. And my son smiles at me with a warmth that is either entirely his own or is something else's love wearing his face. And I sit at this table and I eat my breakfast and I listen to the sound of my family in the morning, and I cannot tell anymore where the house ends and we begin.